Howdy, folks. Welcome in. Yeah. So, as she said, my name is Hinojos, and tonight I'm going to talk to you about the reptiles that live in our Metroplex. So, every photo that you do see in here has been one that has been taken in the Metroplex. Most are by me, some are by my friends, but know that they can be here. And you can find them if you look, but we'll talk about that at the very end. So, before we really get into it, what is a reptile? All right, it's kind of a big question. So I studied evolutionary biology, particularly genomic evolution when I was in school. So that's why I like putting up things like this. But crown, I can't even see it on the screen. Okay, so over here, your crown reptilia, the original ancestors of the reptilian lineage, roughly about 280 million years ago. Now, as we progress forward in time, we can start to see major splits. So the very first group that makes a major split is going to be our lizards and snakes. And then followed up later on by our turtles, crocodiles, and then eventually birds. But what does herpetology not study? Birds. So kind of a shame, but hey. As of right now on the planet, there are roughly 12,000 recognized species. As you were, that's for reptiles and amphibians. So there's probably 7,000 or so. But one of the problems that presents itself when studying reptiles is so many of them can look so similar that we actually can't tell differences unless we do molecular testing itself, i.e., what does the genome look like? How many differences are there between species A and species B? But also, some more of the problems is there's a lot of hybridization, right? Sometimes you could have species A breed with species B, and that makes species C. And that turns into a whole other series of problems, so to speak, for scientists. But I say currently recognized because the more and more that we do genomic work, we're going to find more species, right? It's just going to be how it is. And most of what we're going to find is going to be between these two latitudes. So as you can see, talking like southern portion of Texas is about where it's at. But we can still find some, like in North America, that are a bit more extreme and able to deal with more of a wide variety of issues. Horse latitudes. Does anybody know why they have this name? This is just side trivia. So back when our European folks were traveling the planet with their ships, it just so happens that at these latitudes, a lot of times there's not a lot of wind. So you got to cut weight, right? Let's throw over some horses. Unfortunate, but hey, that's where it gets that name. So let's talk about some physical characteristics of reptiles. Now, the skin. What's the skin covered in? Scales. Are they dermal or are they epidermal? Ooh, have we thought of that? All right. So they are. They're actually epidermal. All right. So they kind of come. They sit on the top, but you can peel. All right. Certain species are born without scales in the reptile hobby, and you can see their skin underneath it. But there are a few different types of scales. So you have what y'all would normally think of, the flat ones that kind of line up like fish scales. We also have keeled scales. And if you think of the vipers, so particularly the rattlesnakes here, that keel down the center of their scale is going to be a raised ridge. There's a few things, a few ideas that some scientists have about why, but I personally don't really care. I just think it's cool. And a third type that we have, it's going to be on those little geckos you'll see around the house. They're beaded scales. So they don't, I think I have a photo later on that kind of shows what I'm talking about. Eyes. All right. So not everybody's eyes are made the same. The same thing is across the reptilian kingdom. For instance, I just brought up geckos. Geckos don't have eyelids, but instead they use their tongue to lick it and keep it moist. Interesting, right? Snakes don't have eyelids either, but they do have a protective scale called a brill that does shed off. whenever it's time for them to shed and grow. Now, what does have eyelids?
Alligators.
Lizards. It's not a lizard, but yeah. Alligators, lizards, turtles. And within some turtles, they also have nictitating membranes. So this is like a second eyelid. So they can be underwater. Hey, have my little filter, but I can still see what's around to find my prey. All right? Also, you're going to have different types of pupils. Most of the time, this is going to be for whether they're active hunters, sedentary, they awake and active during the day, or they awake and active at night. All of these are going to lead into some maybe that cat's eye. You know, if you're at night, you want to kind of limit that light, but still see around. Or if you're a full daytime hunter, like some of our small colubrids, you'll have those circular pupils to take in as much as possible. All right, mouth. Why would I put mouth here? Well, we need to talk about teeth types. So, there are, if you want to know the words, thecodont, pleurodont, acrodont, all of those refer to where the tooth sits. And this is really good when it comes to the phylogeny and figuring out who's related to who. Oh, hey, this tooth sits within a cavity. This tooth sits on the side or at the front of a cavity. All that you can start piecing together their histories, their evolutionary history, and say, oh, these are more closely related because of these traits. But also, how many of y'all been bit by a reptile? One person. I'm right there with you. Me too. Now, some of those teeth really do hurt. For instance, pythons, we don't have any here, but pythons do have 2 rows on their top. So an outer and an inner layer. And they're recurved. So that way they can walk the food into their mouth. Since obviously ain't got no arms or legs. What you gonna do? Right? But then we have another one. Y'all heard of a rattlesnake or a copperhead? Right? Those teeth they use, those are hypodermic needles. And they're constantly replacing them. Because they are hollow on the inside. And they break. Right? Sometimes they'll bite their prey, breaks off. You better have another one coming. So, nose. I put this here because it is interesting to see how many of them use smells, but how many of them don't, and how many of them can utilize their nose for other things like digging out burrows. Right? If you go out a little bit west, you can find a real specialized character known as it's a patch nose snake, but the front scale has actually evolved to be a giant shield so it can push things as it moves through the dirt, finding its prey. Now, let's talk about some physiological characteristics. Thermoregulation. Hey, they're all what type of blooded? Oh. I can't stand that term. Here's what. Their blood is the same temperature as the environment they're in. So this is why we call them ecto. From the outside is how they get their heat. All right? But this means that they have to find ways to deal with that heat or that cold. Right? When it comes to going into the wintertime, they can enter some form of estivation, or we can call it brumation. Or in the summertime, hey, I need to stop being out during the day. I need to become nocturnal in order to find my prey. Because I don't know how many of y'all were hanging outside today. A few of us. It's hot, right? But we'd rather not. So I find that interesting just because it really forces them to find creative ways. And that's where microhabitats really matter, right? Like underneath the rock versus just beyond the rock. Completely different temperatures, right? Because that rock can also hold in the moisture too. Reproduction. All right. There's a lot of ways that they can reproduce, or a lot of different types of reproduction, but it is all internal. So they can lay eggs, they can also give birth, or they can have the eggs develop inside of them and then push them out right before they're about to come out and let the babies actually come out of that membranous sac that surrounds each one. And what's really interesting about it to me is because the eggs they develop with that barrier inside the mom, there's not a transmission back and forth. Like with us, that placenta, that's that interface. So that immune system has to work with each other. They can take that off. They don't have to use that energy to say, hey, this kid that I'm growing, it's going to have viruses and stuff from the father. So with us, viruses are extremely important in mammalian pregnancy. For them, not so much. Respiration. All right. I put this on because recently my mom had the lower left lobe of her lung taken out. Strange, right? So if you look at our lungs, you'll see the left lung has an upper and a lower lobe. The right lung has got an upper, a middle, and a lower. Why would that be? Need room for that heart. Particularly in snakes, it's the same thing. But theirs is reduced down to 25% of the right lung. And interestingly enough, reptiles don't have a diaphragm. So what they utilize are intercostal muscles. So muscles in between the ribs. That's why you will see them, they have to physically move their body, kind of like an accordion, to move the air in and out. They can't just hang out. But because of that, that really does limit how much they can be a hunter. So, your down part of the lung, you can't really have explosive bursts though, but the reason isn't just because of the lung. Their blood has less hemoglobin, which can actually carry that iron. So when they have a burst of energy, that really takes a lot out of them. So that's why I'm not a big fan of like spooking them just because, right? Don't be rude to your friends or your neighbors or whatever. All right, ontogeny. How many of y'all have heard this word before? So this means genetic changes over time. I'll show a couple photos in here, but out of all the species that I've kept and I found in the wild, I find it fascinating how when they are young, they look one way. When they are old, they look very different. This can be from color. This can be from body shape, head shape, their diet, right? A bunch of different things. But I'll show some examples that I like in the area that really show that difference. Now, before we get to actually talking about our neighbors, let's talk about some cultural impacts. So interestingly enough up here, we have a college mascot. We have a mascot for our country, which I'll revisit in a second. We have an artist's representation of what they felt that that album was about, which was recorded in Arlington, Texas, by the way. But we also have our religious side. And I find it interesting that it's rattlesnakes that are 3 out of the 4 things up here, right? And particularly this "don't tread on me." A lot of people don't fully understand that Benjamin Franklin, our country's mascot, he didn't care about a turkey. He didn't care about a bald eagle. Yes, he said a couple of things. But what he said about the rattlesnake really stands out to me. He said, one rattle is not enough to scare a man because they can't hear it. But when you have 13 of them stacked on top of each other, that fear really increases, right? It's that parabolic curve of like, oh, this is something dangerous. And if you look back and you can read some of his writings, particularly when he was writing for a Philadelphia paper, he wrote under a pseudonym. But he discusses how this is a good representation for those 13 colonies. Because this is an American species. By the way, this is one of the 2 species that you can find here. All right, this is the canebrake. Obviously, religious liberty, it's a whole thing. You want to go play with deadly snakes? I'm not into it. But, hey, that is a truly American thing. Although I will say their practices of keeping them, really, really disgusting. Let's talk about economic impacts. So, this right here, this is the North American Reptile Breeders Conference. How many of y'all know how many people run businesses that rely on reptiles for their livelihood? You ever thought of that? It's a lot more than you think. When I started my business, I had it from roughly, I started in the hobby around 2003. I finally got out at about, 2016? I was very surprised at the volumes of money that roll through places like that. We're talking tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars for single animals. All right? Wow. There's a lot more attached to that, but that's not what we're covering today. This one, hey, academics. UTA is one of the premier herpetology schools. That's why I went there. But a few of my professor friends, their entire livelihood is based on studying reptiles. Sweet. Hey, economy. Guess what? Gators, the shoes, right? Other little knickknacks. You see little canes that'll have a rattlesnake head on top or whatever. There's just money to be made, even with goods, and not necessarily the reptiles themselves. And I put this as a pest control. Couldn't find a better one. I hate that it's got chemicals, but how many of y'all know farmers? No?
No farmer.
Do you know farmers? People that farm? Hey, guess what? What are they trying to combat against? Insects or rodents, right? Pests. You got a free system right there. Particularly, did y'all know how much that copperheads love eating cicadas? That's like crack for them. Right? But think about all the mice that they can keep out of a barn or something like that. There's a huge volume of money that is saved by having natural pest control. And it's unfortunate that so many people have demonized reptiles because, hey, personal problems, whatever, that thing can save you money. Right? And what else do pests carry? Disease. Let somebody else take care of it. Come on. All right, let's talk about medical impacts. So obviously, most of us have heard of this one, right? Semaglutide. And where did this fascinating thing come from? What species of North American reptile gives us the GLP-1s?
Gila monster.
Gila monster. Which interestingly enough, does not have its venom glands up here. It has them in the lower jaw. Which signifies that it's much more of a defensive measure for them. Hey, if you're going to come at me, I will bite onto you and I will not let go because it needs to dribble in. All right. But what about these other ones? Captopril, anybody heard of that? Prialt, eptifibatide. These are all from vipers, American vipers in particular, because a lot of their venom has hemolytic properties. So, I think it's this one in particular, if you're going into surgery and they need your blood to not clot, anticoagulants. Or hey, the captopril, hey, you need a blood thinner? Got you. Right? Pretty interesting. And interestingly enough, with semaglutide, that was from a Swedish chemist. He made it in the early 90s. It was originally called exenatide. It was specifically for diabetics, but as we know, it has reached mainstream now, and it's a fashionable thing to do. So, who are my neighbors that are doing all this cool stuff? Let's start off with the turtles. Hey, we've all seen these before. May not have gotten close because they like running away quite quickly. But up here is our red-eared slider. And by the way, at the top, it'll have a regular English name and then it'll have a Latin name of the genus. So the Trachomas genus are the sliders. All right, that's what it is. Now on the left you have a male. On the right you have a female actually laying eggs. Now what's the biggest thing that you can notice just from your visual observation? What's the biggest difference?
Color.
One has a red ear and one doesn't, right? This is that ontogeny I was talking about. Some males, as they get older, become melanistic, i.e. they just keep producing more and more melanin, and they do lose characteristics. But that's how I know this is an older male. Also, these super long claws, it's another way I can tell it's a male, because they need to come up and do this to the ladies to get their attention. It's weird, but you might like watching it on YouTube. It's kind of cute. But this is actually native to our area, though now it has blossomed all around the world, unfortunately. But hey, a lot of them, if you really want to get into it, I think it's from the 40s to the 50s and 60s, they got distributed in a real inhumane way. And now they're total red ear slider farms throughout, particularly Southeast Asia, where they, hey, cook them, cool, get the babies, move on, whatever. All right, did I skip one? Oh, I did. Okay, here we go. Cooters. All right, so this is in the same family as that slider, but it doesn't necessarily have the ear on it, but it does have these more pronounced yellow bars with black surrounding it. These are found in all pretty much the same environments, but on their back, each one of their scoots is going to have some sort of pattern inside of it, whereas these just lay more flat like a camouflage. All right. And so the family they're in are pond turtles, right? But it's interesting because this is also in the same family. This is not a pond-looking turtle, is it? How many of y'all have found any of these when you're out? They're cool, right? They got the little hinge flashed on they can pull up and hide from you. So this is another version of ontogeny that I'm talking about. So the box turtles, some of the males do turn into this more red, vibrant, saying, hey, I'm here, check me out. But when they're born, I think this thing probably fit in my palm. It's just a bunch of shades of brown. Super interesting, right? At least to me. But hey, so the past three turtles I've shown you, these are all in the Amididae family. So New World pond turtles. Now, how many of y'all have seen the snapping turtle before? How many of y'all have grabbed one before? I did just 2 weeks ago, and man, I work with my hands, so I stopped playing games. But if you notice here, this white right here in its eye, that's that nictitating membrane. These are primarily aquatic, so they can't go in and just close their eye. How are they going to see the food around them? So they have that membrane that comes down. All right, let's do our thing, move around. And I will say that I find them to be extremely awesome, but a lot of times people do shoot them. All right. Them and the few alligator snapping turtles. I mean, a couple months ago, I got a photo of somebody that had blown one away. Like, you can see the whole hole through its carapace. It's like, man, thanks. I'm sure that animal did nothing to you. But these you can find. I find them quite often near the Trinity River itself, because these are larger and they don't necessarily hang out in smaller ponds, but the previous ones do. Now, let's go to one of my favorite turtles. And I have been given a lot of grief because I call this turtle very hard to catch, which everyone says, oh, turtles are slow. You haven't tried to catch this one. This thing moves like some kind of watercraft. They are extremely fast. But I do find it interesting because a couple years ago, if anybody's been to the science learning place down at Lagoon, downtown Dallas, they have that little lagoon near the Science Learning Center or whatever. They found the Texas state record for spiny softshell there. Yeah. But these can get quite big, probably somewhere around this at their max size. Their their external extremities are quite large, and they aren't as big as my hand, but they can get pretty close. And these are highly willing to bite. Any fishermen probably know because you probably reeled one in. I personally, it's not often that I actually grab them and show them, but I was walking my neighborhood, I found this one in the spillway. But these are cool. And interesting thing, it doesn't have any scales on it. All right, this is why it's called a soft shell. And we don't have flap shells in North America, but the other one, they do have an actual, kind of like a box turtle, they do have an extra flap. But yeah, be forewarned if you ever do get one on your hook, they're very ready to say hello. All right.
Their
But
neck goes up pretty far.
oh,
too.
it does, and so does the snapping turtle. That's another reason why, depending on how you grab it, if you ever get brave enough and you want to grab one of our common snappers, do not grab it on the sides because they can come around and bite you. All right, I work with my hands, and that's why I stopped playing with it. So I need
So
to
how
do.
can you handle a turtle like that?
What's that?
How can you handle a turtle then?
So you can grab them near the back legs or whenever. So with the common snapper, grabbing them closer to the back legs is fine. Or if you can get them underneath, kind of between the carapace and the plastron. But when you have the alligator snapping turtle, their plastron is so reduced. So instead of being a sheet, it kind of comes into a strange cross type of thing. You can grab them from the back one. And you can hold them like that. But do not ever grab a turtle's tail. You can greatly damage their spine if that's how you approach to grab one. And for those of you that don't know, I don't have a photo of it, but all of our turtle friends, their ribs are fused to their shell, and there are nerves running through that entire shell. So please, if you're going to handle one, be careful because they can feel all of it. But because of that, interestingly enough, they don't have intercostal muscles to breathe. So if you look at a resting turtle, look right here to the left and right of the neck, and you'll see the muscles kind of moving in and out. And that's how they're pushing air in and out of their body. All right, let's move on to our lizards. How many of y'all have seen one of these little brown skinks? You're always, not always, I often hear them before I see them. These love to hang out in shaded, wooded areas with lots and lots of leaf litter. So you'll hear them, it'll be a twitch, 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 because they're very skittish creatures that move kind of like herky-jerky motion, all right? So you'll hear them rustling around in the leaves first. But this is our only species in this genus in the Metroplex. This is our little brown skink. They max out at about maybe a bit longer than that, all right? And they do have autotomy. Many of our lizards do here, and that is the ability to drop their tail. So what happens is if they feel a pressure, they're able to break everything right there and close all the blood vessels along that opening so they don't lose anything, and then the tail continues to move along and attract the prey that way as they escape. All right. So this is one of the extreme versions of ontogeny. This is Plestiodon. So this genus, these are the toothy skinks. And I promise you they are toothy. I have been bit a few times by them, and for being so small, they pack a punch. But they have a very interesting distribution. They're found throughout North America into just northern Mexico, and then the Japanese island chain. Interesting. So if you want to go do some extra homework, go look up our state fungus. The only distributions it has are Texas, Japan. How? I don't know. Biogeography. But these are cool. When they're first born, they look like this. This one was a few weeks ago that I saw it, and it was maybe this big, maybe somewhere in here. So, baby. And then as it moves on to the juvenile stage, you can see it's lost its tail, or the tail color, but it still has that pattern. However, as they become adults, like this large male up here, most of the pattern really has faded at this point. And with this bright orange head, this is a male that is in breeding season. All right, it does kind of tone down outside of breeding season, but this is their succession. And we have, yes?
You're talking about large male. How large?
So I was just about to get into that. So we have two species. We have the broad-headed skink, and we also have the five-line skink. So the broad-headeds get up to 10 to 11 inches max. That's a really, really big one. But for the five lines, we're talking maybe 4.5 to 6.5 inches. If you really want to dig into it, what you need to do is you need to count the labial scales. One has 4, one has 5. It's a real pain in the butt. At the end of the day, there are differences. There's some other ones, like if you look on the underside of their tail, you can see a split anal scale versus a whole anal scale, but that's museum work type stuff, right? We're just here to enjoy them. I'm here to show you who's in your backyard. But either way, finding either of them is really cool, and they are quite fast. But it's good for the kids to chase after them, you know, keep those joints moving. Huh?
Big kids do.
Yeah, big kids too, like me. So speaking of chasing lizards, I don't do that with these, because my joints don't work like that. How many of y'all have seen this one on the top? Oh yeah, they're everywhere. How about this one on the bottom? Interesting. They are around, but the one on top is our Texas spiny lizard. So this ranges from just below the Red River all the way down to the southern border, so like Texas, Mexico, where those interface. The prairie lizard actually right around here is where it starts, but it goes all the way up into the Dakotas. Right. This genus in particular is Steloporus. If you want to go find super cool looking lizards with crazy keeled and what look like serrated scales, go look them up on iNaturalist. There's over 100 species in this genus. And they come from shades of black to brown to, I think there's one in Mexico, I can't think of the name right now, but it's Roy G. Biv. Like head to tail, it's the colors of the rainbow. All right, and that's what I really like about reptiles. As y'all seen some of the color changes we've already addressed. But when these are born, they're both pretty bland, but as they get older, they start to really color up. So on this, you can notice here, even their tail is a different color than their body. Next time you see one of these spiny lizards, see if you can note that difference. Right? Their tail is going to be more of an orange-red hue. All right. Now, earlier Cindy said that my spark animal was an anole, a green anole, and here's why. Because they come in a lot more colors than green. Right? Up here, notice the eye itself, many people don't notice, it's actually blue around it. Right? And their body, like this one I found out at the Trading River Audubon Center, I had never seen one this kind of mustard yellow color. But it was sitting nice and pretty, didn't run off, so I was able to get my photo to do what I wanted it to do. But then this one has got this crazy red on the tail. Awesome. Now these are true tree lizards, and they originate out of the Caribbean. This is the only native one to mainland USA. But what's interesting is that in anole studies, they have what are called ecotypes. So what originally started as one single species living on a certain island for a certain type of tree, depending on, hey, are you going to be a crown species? Are you going to be more towards the trunk? Are you going to be on small limbs? They each start taking on these little micro changes in their body, whether it be from the way that their claws are, to the length of their legs, to the prey that they eat. So on one tree you can have multiple species, but like I said, not here. Here you're going to find the green anole. Funny story. So my spark moment. I'm at my grandma's. She lives in southern Alabama, or lived, and I found one of these. I was like, oh, all right. I've never seen one. I'm gonna keep this. So I trafficked it all the way back to Texas, just to find out they're here too. I felt really bad. I stole it from his population and whatnot, but hey, it happens. We get excited, right? Especially as kids.
I had two last year on my porch. I was sitting there,
And, you know, they were doing the little standoff thing, and then they grabbed each other by their mouth and flipping each other over and over. Is that a male?
So those are males.
Yeah.
But you will see during copulation, the male will grab the female by the neck. So they are very mouthy individuals, to say the least.
Yeah.
They don't bite nearly as much as or hurt near as much as our toothy skinks. But that being said, don't stress them out too much. It's hard. As someone that used to keep reptiles for many years, I find it interesting. I still like holding them, but they can get stressed pretty easily. Because one thing that a lot of people may not consider, when it comes to reptiles, their evolution was very, very dependent on their ability to hide or to get away. Because they are not top predators. They're in the middle, right? So they would be secondary on the food web. So primary producers, then you have bugs and stuff that eat the plants. They're going to eat that. Well, they're that intermediate before you get to large mammals or raptors, right? Birds of prey. So for them, it's imperative to be able to escape or blend in, which I think later on I'll show you some pretty cool blending in from a different species. All right. So here's our gecko. Yes, sir.
Is there a difference between the green anole and the darker one?
No. These are the same species. This is Anolis carolinensis, green anole. But reptiles have an interesting ability to change colors throughout the day. So I guarantee you, this yellow one, later on that evening, it probably got lighter and turned into more of not a mustard yellow, but like a faded yellow. And then the next day it's probably going to be green or brown if it's stressed out. They have chromatophores within their skin that, depending on how they open and close, that's how they can transmit. But even me, when I had my reptiles, I would see one in the morning, it'd be super dark. I'd come back in the evening, super bright, colored up, right? So that's another reason that I found reptiles so fascinating, is because of the variety that one individual can display.
So they're all the same?
Yes, all the ones you see around here all of our natives are the same, yes, regardless of the color. And they will have that pink flap that they flare out and do their push-ups with.
Are those males that do that?
Yes, that's a territorial display kind of thing. So we do have one species they do have one that is non-native here. It's Anolis satiri. It's the brown anole, but I haven't found one, and I've been looking for a while. So it's more of, I don't think it's really worth mentioning. But for those of y'all who really want to go find new stuff. So let's talk about the non-native that all of us know about. All right. What I find interesting about them is that, hey, from all the research that we've done, we actually can't see them having an impact on pretty much anything. Because where do you see them? In your house. They aren't out in the they're not in the prairies. They're not in the forests, right? They're not out there in estuaries. They're hanging out around your house. And they can have 4 clutches a year, but they only lay 2 eggs at a time. So, but yeah, these came over, I believe, in the 70s, and its native range is northern Africa and the southern portion of Europe, so right around that Mediterranean. And they believe that they somehow got onto a boat, showed up, I'm not sure which port, but they're everywhere now. And so earlier I talked about scales. Notice how these are those beads I was telling you about, right? Kind of interesting. Much more of its skin is exposed, and I'm not really sure the reason why that it evolved like that, but it is something to point out. Also, point out here, notice how the pupil, it's large, shrinks, large, shrinks, large, shrinks, right? Because they are strictly nocturnal. They need to be able to filter out that light. But it just so happens we have tons of street lights everywhere. So this helps to allow them to navigate it a little bit better. But these, they also lose their tail, they grow back. But often they will usually come with a series of bands across their body. And as they become older, they brighten up a bit, so to speak, or just become less dark, shall I say.
What do
Do
they
the
eat?
house geckos tend to breed in the house?
Usually they'll be in the walls or up in your attic, yeah. But I have found them outside in the garden, but not very much. So most likely they're in your walls. I mean, I just found one, 2 days ago, hanging out in the front room. Like, all right, buddy, I'll let you be, because I mean, he was the size of my thumb. I'm not gonna mess with him, you know. But they eat anything that lives in your house. All right, I'm talking harvestmen, spiders, different types of flies, moths. I've watched them on my front porch just eat moths, which is pretty cool to watch them hunt. They do eat mosquitoes, but they got to show up. You know, that's the other thing. Like, how many mosquitoes would this have to eat to actually get satiated? I'll go for a moth, please.
How about ants? Do they eat ants?
You know, I haven't witnessed them eating ants. They might, but because of the nature of ants and the species that we have that are common here, like the crazy ants or the fire ants, those, if they wanted to, they could easily take these out. So no reason to poke them, so to speak.
Don't they make a noise at night?
They do
Oh,
it
there
all
we
night.
go. That's a good fact. Interestingly enough, this is one of the few reptiles that actually does have vocal communication. Now, and often we can't hear it, and if you're a bit older and you've lost some of your hearing, you're definitely not going to hear it. But they do little barks and squeaks at each other. That's how they can communicate. So, thank you for bringing that
They're
up.
really loud in Hawaii.
Well, that's because you're probably talking about a different species.
Yeah.
Those are the golden day geckos, I believe. You're talking about the really green ones that they're about that big, hang out.
They are really loud.
So you have those, and then you have the tokay geckos, which whole other thing. I'm glad we don't have tokays here because they will draw blood. I've seen that before. So, anything else before we get off this super awesome little non-native species? Oh, so have y'all ever thought about how do they climb up your walls?
Suction cups.
What'd you say, suction cups? No. I could just see them. I gotta go replace these or where. No. So on the bottom of their feet, they actually have a series of spatulas. Sounds strange, but imagine if I had, let's say, 100,000 of little remotes, a lot thinner, coming out, and then at the bottom, it's got a flat edge with a bunch of little hairs on it. Well, how many of y'all enjoy physics? Nobody. Gotcha. Well, one of the weak forces is the van der Waals force. This is when atoms actually have a force between them, right? Whether it be a low bond or just the gravitational differences between them. So that's how they're able to do this, is when their foot is actually on the wall, those little spatula and the hairs on them interact with the molecules of the substrate they are on. Wild. I don't have a photo of its feet. Sorry about that. I'll do better for the next people. But great question. Thank you. All right, anything else for this charismatic young gecko? No. All right. Let's get into our heavy hitters here. Vipers. All right. Viperidae. Now, all three of these happen to be in the genus Echistrodon. So, this one up on the top left, this is our eastern copperhead. These you can tell because they have more of that Hershey's Kiss appearance with their saddle shape. This one right here, this is our broad-banded copperhead. And I know it's not clear back here, but as you can see, it's much more kind of straight down an actual saddle. And the one on the lower left, that is our cottonmouth. Hey, there we go. So these have, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of vipers have that hemotoxin. They have hemotoxins, but they also have cytotoxins in their venom. And this, what it can do is it'll actually destroy cell membranes. So this is why sometimes when you see people that get a bite from them, the finger starts to swell up, or the hand or foot, but it swells up in a weird way. The skin becomes that real smooth texture, kind of like a balloon. That's because all the cells in there have just died or been ruptured, and they didn't do it in a systematic way. So that fluid just pushes everything to the limit, right? But that makes it extremely important for medical uses, right? So, interesting story. I've never been bit by one, but on one of the forums that I frequent, one of my friends had gotten bit by a copperhead, and he showed us the bill. Came out to $167,000 for the amount of vials needed. Now, part of the reason the vials cost so much is because they don't keep forever. So you have to continually remake them. But also, you're paying for the expertise of the person who made it. You're paying for the horses that you get it from, right? Because you got to have a good quality lineage horse caretaker to administer the venom, let it circulate for a few weeks, come back, collect it, separate it through different laboratory techniques. And then that has to go into a little vial and be lyophilized or freeze dried. And then when the time comes, stick the saline in it, let's get it in. But because of all of those steps and many more, that's why we don't keep anti-venom around for super rare species. Or for dumb people like me who used to keep foreign venomous snakes. I had a pair of baboon vipers. You don't have that here. Because who expects to get bitten by a non-native snake in your country, right? So once my business partner got bit, I was like, all right, wow. Yeah, that care flight was very expensive. But these may be kind of hard to see, but in particular with this, these are keeled scales for the cottonmouth. Scientists don't fully know why, but I believe that for them in particular, the pressure of being primarily a fish eater, although slimy fish, you got to have some way to have some friction to keep it as you're getting to it. But if you do ever see a cottonmouth in the wild, they're nothing like what you've heard. They really are chill and they want to get away from you. But if you're in their way, they have to go by you, right? So you may perceive it as something coming at you. That's not what's going to happen, though. Yes?
Do we have all three of those?
All three of these. So if you want to go, so Eastern Copperhead, go down to Cedar Hill State Park. All right, I've had to cancel walks because I had more baby copperheads around me than I did people I was leading a walk for.
Wow.
Crazy.
Go to Farm Park right here.
Yeah, I mean, you could anywhere. Go outside. Just go outside and find them. They're here, I promise. The broad, so I mentioned to y'all two earlier, but what's interesting is these two actually work in their hybridization zone. So this is more of a pure Eastern Copperhead where you can see those kisses. This is more of a pure broad-banded where you have the single saddle. But because they do have intergrades here, you can find a variety of them throughout the Metroplex that have this, 40 to 60 or 75, 25 kind of appearance. Broadbands, though, they do, generally, they have a bit more color from what I've seen in person. And the habitat's slightly different, but yeah.
Do they attack you? Do they?
I mean, if you're messing with them, but they're
Listen
not.
in what way?
If you're doing that, or let's say,
What if you're just walking along?
no, and I will get to that on the very next slide about what. But that being said, almost every single time that I've been bit or somebody I know has been bit, it's generally because they scared the animal, right? Because it's very costly for a venomous animal to use its venom on something like us because they get zero energy back. They're not going to eat us. But at a molecular and a cellular level, they have to replenish their venom. So that's putting them into a deficit. So they want to be really hesitant about what they use it on. And in particular, so let's talk about sight for a second. Actually, let's get to the next slide. let's talk about sight for a second. So, everybody, we've seen these before, right? Okay. So when we're talking about sight, these are the most important things for sight when it comes to vipers. These are going to be their heat pits. Within there, they have cells. So when I say sight, it's not that they're smelling, but the heat comes in and they have cells that can differentiate to the thousandth of a Celsius the degrees of something. Now, why might that matter? If you're going to be, for instance, let's say with this timber rattlesnake on the right, if you're going to be eating something like ground birds or maybe a furry little rodent, how much good is it going to do you to bite that outer layer of feather or fur? You're going to miss it. Then you wasted energy. So by being able to differentiate those thousandths of degrees, hey, I need to go in a bit deeper to get to the body. All right, so that's why for them, this eyesight, not that big of a deal. But those cells are. So, rattlesnakes, Crotalus, one of my favorite genera ever. I just find them to be super awesome, and it's an American thing, right? Not just North, but all the Americas. These are cool. And this one on the left. So, this one on the left is our Western Diamondback. This photo was taken 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. How big do y'all think that is, by the way? Just as a fun aside. 3 foot. 3 foot? This is the size of a donut.
Well, that, but I'm talking about when you stretch them out.
Maybe a foot and a half. This is a donut. This is a yearling. What's interesting about this is I was leading a walk, and there had already been over 15 people that passed it, and it was right here. I'm talking right, almost on the path itself. So this is what goes back to your question of them biting or anything. If vipers were so bitey, they wouldn't have let all those people just go by. They aren't interested in that. And it is really crazy because that morning there was also somebody with a dog, and I thought, oof. But hey, it's not wasting it on that either. But rattlesnakes, every time they shed, they will add on a rattle, right? But when they first start off, it's called a button, and it actually doesn't have anything to rattle against. So they just do this, and it looks goofy. Right? Yes.
So, comment on Sweetwater and the rattlesnake roundup. Is that a good thing, bad thing? I mean, it sounds horrible. Oh, as you talked about, for profit.
How to be correct without being offensive. It needs to stop.
Yeah.
It's animal abuse, and it is teaching a highly ridiculously ignorant mindset to people. Because earlier we talked about pest control. You get rid of rattlesnakes? Dude, seriously? No. Bad. But beyond that, just the sheer waste of a life. What are we doing? Right? Like, I didn't talk about alligators, although they are here, but we hunted them down so heavily that they had to be protected. Right? Like, what are we doing? What are these animals doing to us to draw our ire so much? I don't know. That's a whole other question. Yes. Anything left on this that I want to say? No. No. Don't grab them. In particular, I have seen, so to put it in perspective, if you think you're fast relative to a strike from a rattlesnake, you're wrong. All right, the fastest recorded strike, it's not from one of our native ones here, but it's a quarter of a second. All right, that's the neotropical rattlesnake, and they are so aggressive when they try to be held, they are willing to snap their neck to get away from you. These are, much like Benjamin Franklin said, this will instill fear into somebody. Promise.
Can we go back to the copperhead?
Sure.
I've seen them in Far Park with, they have like green tails.
Yes, so this is when they're their first year. So we call that a caudal lure, C-A-U-D-A-L. And what they will do with that is, it's more for like catching little amphibians, because eastern copperheads and cottonmouths, they love amphibians, particularly frogs. And so when that little thing is wiggling around, it looks like a worm. So hop, hop, come on, hop, hop. As soon as they go for it, tag them. Not too long until the venom takes effect. But yeah, great observation. I'll make sure to add that later. Yes.
I've heard that juvenile snakes can be more dangerous if they bite you because they can't control the level of venom that they inject. Is that true or false?
No,
okay.
no.
And then are they like equally reluctant to strike as a grown snake?
Yeah, well, here's the biggest change. Because of things like the Roundup, what snakes are getting caught though? It's the ones that are going to be more aggressive, because they're more willing to be like, dude, you found me, I'm a buck up, or unless you have really experienced hunters. But in particular, like in the southeast United States, we have the eastern diamondback, which it is extremely rare to find one in the wild that will even rattle anymore, because it seems like we've decimated so much of that more aggressive population. And it's not that that's immediately trickling down, but certain traits do get passed down. And they aren't necessarily like, hey, we'll take care of our kids, but rattlesnake mothers will meet up together in their dens. And oh, by the way, all of our vipers in North America do give live birth. So, but they'll meet up in dens, and all the moms will usually birth them together, and they'll hang out with them for a week or two until they get their first shift. So, cool stuff in that. All right. We've seen these before, yeah? All right, so on our left, this is our western ribbon snake. These are sister species, but one of the big things that you can tell, this has got this little checkered pattern in here. This is our Texas garter. This is a subspecies of the common garter. But this one does not. It's just a straight, solid band. All right, now, these are a lot more common. These are very ready, or willing and ready to bite you. All right, it doesn't hurt, I promise, but hey, I do find them interesting. And these, so earlier I said the eggs will develop without having that interaction with the mother. These give birth, and each egg has an individual link to the mom, so she has to eat to give them energy. And then eventually she will give birth to all of them and release their placental sacs with them. These are also amphibian specialists, but they do take care of. This is another good thing to have on the farm. They'll eat grasshoppers, crickets, arachnids, all kinds of things like that.
Do they smell with their tongues?
Yes. So if we want to get into that real quick, so their tongue is forked. So as it comes out, it says, let me get a right reading and a left reading. When it comes back in, there's an organ on the top of their mouth called a Jacobson's organ. They will put the forks into that, and then they can say, I want to go left, or I don't want to go left. Right? And that's how they can determine what they're going to follow after. So if they smell prey, oh, hey, let's go this way. That kind of a thing. And I guess, good point. Let me make another point here. So I talked about how sensitive those pits were for our rattlesnakes. They can also see trails, heat trails of the rodents, right? Because if we're talking thousandths of a degree, you're going to get some heat as you walk across it, or as they pee everywhere. Hey, let's follow that. All right. Water snakes. How many of y'all have seen one and thought it's a cottonmouth? Well, these are pretty. I can't say that I think they look like them, but I've been doing this a long time, so I understand that can be a mistake. But these are quite different. The eyes for them, most of them are up more near the top of their head because they are primarily water snakes. And when these are actually in the water, this is how they swim. Only their head is above the water. If you see a cottonmouth, you're going to see about 45 to 55% of its body up, because that lung is going to be holding it up. But also they're just more broad bodied. If they start getting under the water, they're going to sink and just be done. But these are super common. This is our subspecies. This is our broad-banded. This one right here is our diamondback water snake, and this is our plain-bellied water snake. Every time I find these, I like to talk about them on a nature walk, but they do have not a hemotoxin, but they do have something in their saliva that doesn't really allow your blood to clot quickly. You will bleed a lot. It's not a venom. Anticoagulant, I guess would be the term. But these are found primarily in the water and on the shores. And with the broadband in particular, I want to bring up something regarding venomous snakes. How many of y'all heard that adage? Was it red on black, friend of Jack, or whatever? Don't listen to that junk. Because what do you see here? What are we talking about, right? If you know you're looking at a coral snake, that's a different thing. But this has all those same colors, just in a different arrangement. If you're unfamiliar with it, don't listen to some stupid folk story or rhyme to bet your life upon. It's not worth it. But these do eat quite a bit of fish, and they are very fun to watch fish. This one right here on the top right is diamondback water snake. I was actually fortunate enough to get to watch this hunt for about 15 minutes or so. Really, really interesting if you can find the time. And find one doing it in the wild. All right, our rat snakes. This one on the right, this is our Great Plains rat snake, and the one on the left is our Western or Texas rat snake. So earlier, I was asked about how they're able to climb up things so readily. How many of y'all have seen that? They're scaling up a tree, or I've had one fall from a tree onto me one time. Like, what are you doing? So whenever they really get ready to climb, they have tiny ridges on their ventral scales that can allow them to kind of grip with their ribs. So that's how they're able to get that tight kind of, not a grip, but they're able to hold on and move up and down the bark. All right. Talking about more pest control, these are great for it. These can get pretty large. I've seen some rat snakes upwards of 5 or 6 feet. They are not venomous, but notice this is a circular pupil, right? These are active during the day. They need that light to come in. At nighttime, you can find them hanging out, and under logs or in cricks of trees, stuff like that. But super cool. I wouldn't say that these are super spectacular compared to some of our vipers or whatnot, but that's just my opinion. If you want a good pet snake, go here. Promise. Because if you don't want to deal with them in the wintertime, put them in brumation, just stick them in a closet. Right? Put them in a tub, stick them in a closet, come back in the spring. They'll still be there. This is one reason that keeping colubrids, native colubrids, you don't have to worry about having a room that's heated. This is their native temperature. But pythons, too much.
Can they be gray too?
They can be gray. So the ones that we have around here aren't necessarily, but if you go out east, you have the gray rat species complex, which is going to have Pantherophis allegheniensis, and it's going to have a few other ones that are in there. But the gray ones you're talking about, particularly, are more out east, because as these get older, the Texas turns into more of this reddish, brown, orange hue set, and this one is going to become more silver, and these maroons, you get to really bright reds as they become adults. Those ontogenetic changes. All right. Yeah, cute, right? Super tiny. Hey, never seen one that small? So I actually found this at Angelina National Forest maybe a month ago. Nearly stepped on it in the middle of the path, but as they get older, they turn out looking like this. So the genus Scheraria, these are our American brown snakes, and this one in particular is a DeKay's brown snake. So it's actually named after an American herpetologist. These are super cool because they don't get bigger than 12 inches or so, and super non-venomous, not harmful. You can pick them up, play with them. I've never had one even attempt to strike. It's just not in their nature. All right, but they like soft-bodied invertebrates like worms. They'll eat arthropods as well, so beetles or whatever other little critters you got running around. Not the most common, but it's honestly because a lot of people don't look for them.
Well, I
And they
have
are
them
so
in my
small.
yard, and they get aggressive when I poke them with a stick.
I don't think that's the one you're thinking of then.
I've taken pictures and put it on my Facebook.
Yeah?
What kind of
And
snake
it bit
is
you? It tried to strike at you?
Yes.
Good for you. How dare you? Just taking a nap. Well, I've never had a bad experience. But that being said, I haven't met all of them either. So I'm sure there's a spicy one here or there. This one, though, the next one, I'm sure many of you have seen. Yeah. Anybody garden?
Oh, yeah, I got
Yeah.
those too.
This is your rough earth snake. So there are only two species in the United States. We have our rough and our smooth. The smooth you won't find until you get out into southeast Texas, all the way out to the East Coast. But this one has a tiny keel in the middle of its scale, and that's where it gets that rough name. These almost all look like this: dark on top, light on bottom. These eat a bunch of soft-bodied invertebrates in your garden as well. And I wouldn't, don't kill them. I don't know, some people want to get rid of all the snakes, but look, it's fine. These will eat what eats your plants. So especially if you're growing food, let them do their pest control. Hey, how many of y'all have seen this? These are pretty cool. Once again, notice the circular pupil. There's nothing too fascinating to say about them besides the fact that they mimic vines. I think that's pretty cool. You'll see them and they're kind of looking like they're drunk, hanging out on a branch. That's them mimicking that wind movement of the photosynthetic life. Also, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but a lot of the things that we have looked at have brighter undersides than on the back. Does anybody have any reason why that might be?
Airplanes are camouflaged that way.
How kind?
You're looking up toward the sky's bright. If you're a predator down below, that's it.
There we go. Do we hear that? So if you're below it looking up, hey, that sun's coming down. That bright is just going to blend in with it. Makes it harder to see. If you're up above, like a snake or a bird looking down, are you going to really notice this green color if it's in a bunch of photosynthetic life? And a lot of things are like that. You can look at fish, very similar too. Thank you for that answer. All right, ringneck snakes. Who's pulled one of these out before? These are super cool. Much like the other small snakes, they eat soft-bodied invertebrates. They also eat some arthropods, maybe some snails. They're cool. As you can see, this one, see that milky, that blue eye color? Thank you for coming. That is indicative that it's going to shed soon. All right. So what happens is snakes will release a milky substance, so to speak, that separates that old skin from the new skin. And when it covers up the eye, it gives that look. On the belly, it'll represent as like a pink color. But give it like a week, and it'll shed out. But these, you'll find a lot of them underneath rocks or stumps, or you find them near little burrows and stuff like that. But I find more of these in the forest, but you can find them out in your yard. So we've covered all the species I'm going to talk about. So does anybody have a specific one that they would like me to talk about before I move on to a final slide? All right, real inquisitive. Thank you. So, tips for going outside, if you ever actually do want to do this. Number one, I guess there is no number, bullet one, choose the habitat. If you're going to be trying to find snakes, you're not going to go out into the middle of the lake, are you? Or, hey, if you want to find a rattlesnake, right, you're not going to go downtown Arlington or downtown Grapevine. Know the habitat that you're going to. Actually have an idea of where does this species live, what does it eat, what are its hours, like what business hours does it keep, right? Know your species, the next bullet. Just like I mentioned, some of the high prices of the vials or antivenom earlier. If you don't know what it is, do not grab it. But if you want to be risky, go ahead. Don't call me afterwards. Call your health professional that you visit. Bring the correct equipment. So every time I do go out and I think that I'm going to be seeing venomous snakes, but I believe I have my hook, have my experience, have on boots, have a buddy with me. But if you're going to be going for other things, if you're going to be searching for more aquatic snakes, a hook ain't going to do you that much good. If you want to have on waders, right? Or if you want to find turtles, hooks ain't worth a dang in that. Get something to get in the water, get dirty, or when you get out, dry yourself off. All right, don't get discouraged. I have been, so the past 2 years, I've started a herpetology affinity group, and our goal has been to find every reptile and amphibian in the Metroplex. Right now, we found 51 out of the 80 something. It's 2 years worth of work. Remember, these evolved to be highly discreet, cryptic, whatever word you want to use. They aren't just going to present themselves to you. So don't get discouraged if you don't find something. And finally, have some fun. It's fun to get out there, hang out with your friends, find something new, get cool photos. This is probably the most excitement that I've shown all year.
100%. Yep. I took this photo. He screamed from the other side of the mountain.
This is a western milk snake. This is actually in the genus Lamprepeltis. So milk snakes and king snakes are all the same thing. But this was hiding under a piece of slate on a trip I took up to Arkansas. And then it promptly bit me right where the cuticle and nail meet. So don't look. I love king snakes, but man, once they figure out they got teeth, they like using them. So, but yeah, have fun. Go out there with friends too. It's, it may not be the popular hobby, but I promise you're going to see a lot more looking for herps than you do looking for birds because they are so hidden. Right? Now, does anybody have any questions?
Coral snakes.
They are here. So, if you need to go down to the southern portion of Dallas County, you can find them like northern Dallas County, but South Dallas County, Cedar Hill State Park, Dogwood Canyon Audubon Center, that's their primary hotspot in the Metroplex. But quick aside, they come from the elapids. These are the front-fanged venomous snakes. They have neurotoxins. They're not like a viper. So when they bite you, what's going to happen if they get a wet bite, your diaphragm, your central, like your automatic muscles, so your diaphragm and stuff like that is going to start shutting down. So you're going to be conscious as your organs start to say, I can't work right now. And you can't breathe and you choke. And yeah, kind of rough, but hey. Any other questions? Yes.
Are you familiar with the blue jays poking out the anole bellies?
I think it's the kites, Mississippi kites.
Some of my
Past 2 years have taken over the skies.
anoles have, found them like dead, drying up, and you turn them over, and their bellies are poked out.
Interesting.
And this woman on Facebook said she saw a blue jay do that.
I can see that. If they need a liver, that's an easy one to get. That's where a lot of nutrients are at.
Will you repeat that?
Oh, so she was saying, have I noticed or do I know about birds, particularly a Mississippi kite or a blue jay, gutting a green anole? And I said no, but it wouldn't surprise me because livers have a ton of nutrients in them. So I could see them saying, oh, that's an easy treat, and I can bypass all of these bones. Right. Anything else?
Is there like a non-venomous snake that you want to have in your flower beds and stuff?
Any native non-venomous snake is more than welcome to hang out in my flower beds. I'm cool. But if I were to choose one, definitely let all of your rough earth snakes hang out because the rough earth snakes, the really plain looking ones, what they can do is they can actually get in and help open up that soil, which then allows more aeration and more water to get down and kind of trickle down, right? So this is, if you want one in your garden, I support this. All right. Any more questions for me? Yes, sir.
I've heard that certain snakes have specific odors. Do they?
Yeah, for sure. Like in particular, garter snakes just have a really nasty musk. That's why I'm not the biggest fan of picking them up, especially when they're older. But when you do aquatic snakes like the Nerodia, the water snakes, it's real fishy, right? So that was partly why I really kind of moved out of keeping snakes as a hobby, because I was taking on that smell. And as I got older, my mid-20s, I was like, it's fun, but I'm finishing up with my school. Like, I need to move on to something else and not always smell like snake urine. So that's all right. Any other jokes or stories, questions, complaints? Send to Cindy. She can listen to it. But if not, hey, thank every single one of y'all for giving me your time and listening to me talk.